Hi, good morning. This is Damon Scott, Marketing Director here at PVBS, and I want to thank everyone for joining us this morning on our introduction to Microsoft Dynamics NAV for Government Contractors. Today, we will be providing an overview of the Microsoft Dynamics NAV for Government Contractors, which is a fully integrated business management solution. Today's presentation, we're going to look at the executive dashboards, the fully integrated web time and expense system, project setup. We'll also include some billing setup and managing funding. We're going to jump into some invoicing and invoice formats, and hopefully we'll have time. We'll get into managing indirect rates as well. So as we go through this, we have some housekeeping things to take care of first. So just want to let you know that this webinar is being recorded, and it will be posted to our PVBS YouTube account later today. If you have any questions, please post those into the question section, and we will try to get those as we go along. If we cannot get to your question, we'll either save it towards the end of the webinar if we have time, or we'll contact you separately to answer that. Also, later today, you should receive an email invitation to take a post-webinar survey. We really appreciate any feedback that you can provide for us. We certainly want to make this a better learning tool for everyone. So please take a few minutes to answer some questions for us. Okay? And today's agenda, we includes a brief introduction about PVBS, and then we're going to jump right into a demonstration of the product. Okay? So again, if we're able to, we'll answer questions as we go along. We'll also try to save a little bit time at the end. So a little bit about PVBS, Pleasant Valley Business Solutions. We are a top-tier Microsoft Business Solutions partner, serving only the government contracting market. Our headquarters are just outside of Washington, D.C. in Reston, Virginia. It gives us a unique access and insight into the GovCon community. So also as an experienced leader with over 14 years of success in the government contracting market and an intelligent innovator with Microsoft systems, PVBS is a direct resource to both government contractors and the Microsoft community. The Microsoft Dynamics NAV for Government Contractors that we're going to take a look at today, it's a rich, robust accounting solution. It's compliant with federal rules and regulations. It also provides complete integration and ease of use. Again, PVBS, we are driven to develop excellence in providing the most comprehensive solution to our customers and our. Now, with that, I'm going to turn it over to our presenter today, Mr. Paul Skrupski. He is our VP of Sales and Marketing. Paul, welcome and thank you.
All right. Well, thanks, Damon, and good afternoon or good morning to everybody on the call, depending on where you are in the U.S. And give you guys a little bit of insight and background on the solution. Before we do that, now I've been doing this for quite a long time now. I'm getting ready for a presentation this weekend, and I realized that it's been 25 years that I've been working with enterprise business systems, the first 10 really on the client side and the last 15 as a partner at PVBS to really provide these type of solutions to our clients. So I'm excited to show you what's going on today, and I'm also excited about what Microsoft is doing in the marketplace. So Microsoft is really starting to make some tremendous innovation regarding the software, and we're going to give you a little insight into what that is today, because just, I guess it's in the last 2 weeks, Microsoft released Dynamics NAV 2016. So we're not showing that today, but we'll tell you a little bit about what does that mean. So NAV has been around actually since 1987, and there's now 110,000 companies that use it worldwide. There's 4,000 partners that deliver these solutions similar to PVBS. The thing that makes us different is our focus on government contractors, and also we're very tightly tied to Microsoft with a couple of their key programs, one being we're a technology advisory partner to them, and also our solutions are certified for Microsoft Dynamics. So a little more about the Microsoft business model is that they develop solutions that fit what we'll call horizontal market. There's a list of industries that are here. The solution can meet the requirements of any of these type of industries. Microsoft's model is the solutions get delivered through partners. So partners are the ones that provide, we'll say, that last mile of expertise. So whether it's some features around invoicing or workflow, or it's just knowledge of how to set up the system, That's that last step, and that's what partners do. And you can see on this slide, PVBS, we are their go-to partner on the government contracting side. We've been really focused on it for the last 12 years when we kind of shifted the business model, and really we've had tremendous success delivering those solutions because of our focus. All right, so the Dynamics NAV Roadmap. So Microsoft, for folks that don't know, Microsoft, they actually bought this company called Navision back around 2002. And at the time, I guess in 1999, I was working for a client at the time. We were the largest user of Navision in the world. So we were about, I guess, a little over $1 billion multinational company. And we were the largest in terms of the number of users, not revenue, the number of users. And what's been exciting is since Microsoft put their stamp on it, we see some incredible enhancements and also some amazing innovation. And what I want to talk about is some of the innovation that's happening. So Microsoft put their stamp on it with 2009 to make it look and feel more like a Microsoft product. What we're going to show today is NAV 2015. And the things that Microsoft brought to bear with 2015 is, one, the tablet experience, trying to simplify the solution for end users, and they call One Microsoft, which is, leverage more of the Microsoft stack. So whether it's Office 365 or the initial introduction of Power BI, and then with 2016, we're going to continue to add on to this. So with 2016, the key things that people are excited about is improved workflow. So the ability to create more customized workflow, document management, e-services, and then streamlining the user interface across all clients. And Damon, if you want to go to the next slide here, when we talk about all clients, what does that mean? So in terms of NAV 2016, what's happening, the first thing I'm going to focus on is, we'll say the third box to the right on the top, it says Windows. And it says desktop, web, tablet, and now with 2016, the phone experience. So Microsoft is making it where you can have access to the solution through any of those components, basically. The other key thing is the Office 365 enhanced in experience and also working natively with Power BI. So for folks that use Office 365, when they say enhanced in, that means actually NAV can be a menu item in your Office 365 suite. And then also enhanced on Azure experience, Microsoft recently announced that on Azure, but Microsoft will also provide the IT service around Azure for folks that want to use NAV in the Azure cloud. And then the last thing that I'll speak to is the bottom right-hand corner is engineering. And what Microsoft is doing is they're making it much, much easier for partners to upgrade clients from version to version. Because Microsoft's going to this yearly release cycle with lots of exciting innovation, they want to make sure that partners can take advantage of that, get the value on that. So that improved engineering, they're making it where it's much easier for us to move our clients from version to version. All right, so that's a little bit about what's going on with Microsoft, a little background on our company, and now we're going to hop right into the system and give you guys a little bit of preview of the solution itself and how it operates. All right, so what I want to do is I'm going to start with a little bit of a general overview. And one of the things that Damon mentioned is on the right-hand side, there's a little question panel. So as we're going through the system, if you have some questions, feel free to stop and ask. We might not answer it during the presentation. We might wait till the end. Questions, we'll make sure. So from a general overview perspective, what I'll do is I'll cover the different components of the solution to just give you kind of a 30,000-foot view, and then I'll go through a day in the life. I'm not going to cover all details of the system because we only got about 45 minutes. I'll cover some of the key aspects that Damon mentioned in the beginning. If you're interested in a detailed presentation, feel free to give us a message in the question bar, or you can email us and we'll provide contact information at the end. And we're happy to provide a detailed presentation over the web or at your office. So what you're looking at right here is this is Microsoft Dynamics NAV 2015. Microsoft has what they call a role-tailored client, which started in the 2009 version. And the idea is make an interface that's specific to the user. So you can see I logged in as an accounting manager, and I can see key activities that I'm responsible for performing or overseeing. So things like invoices that need to get created, expense reports that need to get processed. It's like a visual cue for me, and I can actually drill into this and get into the details. So here's the one expense report that was submitted and approved, and accounting needs to now review it. It hasn't been transferred over to AP yet. So if I open up that document, I can see all the details of the expense report in terms of the projects and charge codes, the amount that was charged. In terms of approval, if I hit my approval box up in the process section, I can see who approved it and when they approved it. And I can also see any type of attachments related to it. So these would be receipts that the user attached as part of the expense recording process on the web. The idea here is from that home page, give me that drill down quick access to information to answer questions that I might have on a process or on an open task assigned to me. There's also different visualizations. So I'm showing my balances per bank account, and I'm also showing integration with Outlook. And we'll cover some other areas related to that as part of this process. So it's not going to replace Outlook. It's like a view into your Outlook components. Over to the right, I have the ability to schedule reports, have those reports show up in my inbox. So if there's a report that you want to run at night and have it ready for the morning, I can do that. Maybe you want to queue up your month-end reports, have them processed, and they show up in my inbox as needed. The top right-hand section, I call this the My section, and whether it's my jobs or my vendors or my customers, it's a way as a user you can manage a subset of that master list. So here are the 5 different projects that I go into in most every demo, the right-hand side, and easily add and remove as needed. And then over on the left-hand side, these are the different menu items that I get into in every demo. And if I right-click, as a user, I can tailor that navigation pane to the things that I want to see on there. So you can see whether it's in my home pane, journal, posted documents, or the full list of departments. That gives me the ability to add and remove to this list. In terms of that department list, the department list gives you an idea what is the breadth of functionality. So everything from financial management, which is going to include the GL, cash management, AP, AR, and fixed assets. And these are all integrated, and they're all part of the core Microsoft license. The second thing is sales order processing, purchase order management. We've got clients that have inventory they manage for the government. So if they do, and whether they're making stuff or storing stuff, they can warehouse it, manufacture it. Most of our clients do project-based work for the government. So there's a full project accounting process, reselling of products, resource planning, servicing, HR, and then also integrated payroll. So all those come as part of the Dynamics NAV solution. Other things that you'll note is, from the core system for companies that are services related, a key part of what they do is they need to enter time and expenses and approve those type of documents. So we'll go through today entering of timesheets and expense reports and approval of that by a supervisor or a project manager. The next thing we'll get into is from a reporting perspective, what you'll see is that every module has a series of reports. So whether in project accounting it's the project-based reports, or maybe in financial management it's my income statement, balance sheet, statement of cash flow, all those are available to users inside the system. In addition to users inside the system, what we found is that people that are outside of finance are now more interested in information. So about 5 years ago, Microsoft, they made some significant improvements to Excel as an analytics tool, and they also made it so we could integrate the back end of the system as SQL Server, and we can integrate analysis services, which is the data cube technology, with Excel. So what we've done is we built out a data cube, and then we built out a set of dashboards that you can make available to the organization. Whether it's on the operational side, an income statement by job or by task, maybe it's a burn rate report. So when I drill into that, here's my burn rate report, and it's showing me for the projects, tasks, and period that I select, the detail regarding for each month revenue, all of my operating expenses, including indirects that have been allocated, net income or loss, and also what was spent. And what you can see is when I select one of these cells and you look up in the formula, there is no value that was keyed in here. It's just looking back to that cube called jobs at a measure called total spent, filtered by the different slicers that I've selected. So as a user, it gives me the ability to get a current picture of what's going on a particular project or group of projects. Then over to the right, it's showing me a trend of my funding that's been used. Then based on the average of the last 3 months, it divides that by remaining funding to give me an indication of how many months of funding, if I continue at that same pace, are left from a usage perspective. Other views are things like the spend view. So in taking revenue out of it and also the funding consumed, this is just a view for someone that wants to get an idea of what are the costs that have been incurred on a particular job range of tasks for a period. And it's showing me a trend of those different cost elements. Then labor detail is information about hours that have been charged. Same kind of concept with those slicers associated. So that's just some examples of operational views. We also have a set of financial views. So whether it's the business overview with a trend of revenue, profit, and AR, a balance sheet with my key metrics over the right, income statement, cash flow, and different indirect rate views. So these views are ones that can be made available, whether it's to the executive team, operations, oftentimes people that want to have a more graphical view of the business. You can also create your own views, whether these are a little more advanced or as simple as just querying data. So an example of that, let me open up an empty sheet here. And what we'll talk about a little bit is, from this empty sheet, what can a user analyze in terms of data that comes from both the financial system and time entry? So whether it's budgeted data, so budgeted hours, revenue, budgeted cost data in terms of the total cost, job ledger, which is my historical project data, so AR, whether it's current, 30, 60, or 90, labor hours, labor spent, unbilled, unposted data. So anything I want to analyze, I just take that measure and I drag and drop it into my value section. So here are hours that have been charged, and then unposted hours are hours that were charged in a timesheet but haven't been processed through accounting yet. These are two things I want to look at, and then if I go down, you can see other things like contract and funded value and backlog and profit. How I might want to group this stuff would be the rows. So if I go down a little bit, you'll see different ways you might want to group it. So whether I want to group it by contract, so that would be any type of GWAC or BPA, some type of either agency-wide or customer-wide schedule that you have. So if I wanted to see it by contract, I would just take that particular measure and drop it in. So now in my demo system, it looks like I've got 5 different contracts. You can see the hours and unposted value by contract. Maybe you don't want to see it by contract. You want to see it by project manager. So let's go ahead and take that project manager. Let's drop them in there. So now here are the PMs in my demo system and the hours for people that they manage. So that's great, but they might want to know more than just people have charged hours. Maybe they want to know what labor categories. So I'll grab the labor category name. Let's put that as a measure underneath of it. So I can see the different labor category names underneath the PMs. So in addition to labor category, maybe I I should really look at it as project, then labor category. So let's grab the job, and then we'll look at it underneath the job as part of that hierarchy. So once I drop the job in there, now you can see by job, PM, job, labor category, hours, and unposted hours. So just one example, but the idea here is that this gives you that ability to query the data. So this was Microsoft's vision about 5 years ago. And now let's fast forward to NAV 2016 and something that came out last year called Power BI. So for folks on the phone that use Office 365, you might have seen Power BI as an option for you, and you might wonder, what is Power BI? So let me show you a little bit about what is Power BI and how can it be used. So Power BI is a dashboard technology and also a reporting technology. In terms of how you access it, you can access it via Power BI in the cloud, which is what I'm using right here. Power BI mobile, which means I'm accessing it via mobile device, or Power BI desktop. So I actually can have a desktop version of this. What you're able to do is set up a predefined set of dashboards and make those available to people. So this is just the demo set that Microsoft has. And what I did is I'm looking at one set of views, and this can just be a high-level view of different metrics that I use to analyze the business. If I select any one of these, so this one is showing by country details about revenue. So if I wanted to know more about this, I can just select that view, and now it drops me into a more detailed sales dashboard. So for companies that sell things, I can quickly see here by country what is the overall performance. Here's the key products that we sell, and then this is the trend annually of overall revenue based on those sales. I can select any one of these measures, and now it's going to refilter it to show the details in the other section. So if I select whiteboard, now you can see, that Great Britain is the leader in whiteboard sales for us, and it's a certain percentage of our sales, and you can see that trend of overall sales there. You can see the big drop off here. Maybe I wanted to look at it in a different way. Instead of by product, we want to look at it first by country or something like that. We can do that by selecting the country, and now the other sections get updated. So what you're able to do is set a default set of dashboards, assign that to somebody so they can view it. Also, as a user, you can predefine your own set. So I'm looking at a set here, and let's go ahead and show you how you could build something on the fly. So this is my blank canvas, and now I can decide what I want to analyze. So the first thing I want to look at is, let's look at sales. I'm going to go ahead and select that as a measure. And then at the bottom is just some different calendar options, and let's go ahead and look at it. Let's look at it by quarter. So now here's a view of our sales over the first 4 quarters of the year. You can see that for some reason Q2 didn't have any sales. That's not a good thing. But that's my first thing I want to analyze. Now I can just click into the box, and now let's set up something maybe where we want to look at sales and profit. And let's look at that by, let's see what measure we might want to analyze by. So let's look at it by the name in terms of this is the salesperson that is actually selling, or no, I'm sorry, this is the customer that we're selling to. So you can see the profit and sales by customer. And then finally, let's go ahead and let's look at where these customers are located. So I'm going to go ahead and add one last chart, and let's look at sales, and we'll look at it as a chart for the overall, a map of overall sales. So let's go ahead and make this a little bit bigger, and we're going to add in profit, and we need to just select, let me find Trying to find my country if I can here. Oh, there it was, country region. All right, so now I'm showing the details regarding my sales by country. So you can see the sales across the map. And now, same idea here. If I wanted to look at one particular quarter, let's look at Q1. And now once I hit Q1, you can see that the different groups get updated. And same type of idea, if I want to look at one of my particular clients, I look at the Canon group. When I select them, now you can see the sales for Canon group quarter over quarter. And then let's zoom out of our map. And you can see that all the sales for that client are in the U.S. So it's a way that a user can build a view on their own, as part of this analysis process. So now I'm going to get into the day in the life. So it's kind of just a little picture of the different pieces and then something new of what's going on with Microsoft. And Damon, as I switch over, maybe you can, let's take a quick poll to see what Microsoft products people are using.
Absolutely, and I have that all lined up. So real quick question for everyone on the line while Paul sets up the next section here is what Microsoft products are you currently using? Paul will demonstrate a little bit about the Power BI that's in the Office 365. A lot of folks are familiar with SharePoint, of course Dynamics CRM, and looks like the numbers coming in at 100% across the board for Excel, which we kind of expected. We do want to make sure people are familiar with that as we're going through it. About 90% on Outlook, 45 on SharePoint, and 30 for Office 365.
Okay. Looks like people are still voting here. We're up to 85% voted. So I think that gives us a good sense. It looks like a little over 30 on Office 365, which I think is getting a lot of traction. So, all right, excellent. Thanks, Damon. All right, so we're going to now hop into the more detailed side of the software and give you a little idea of how companies are using it today. So I'm going to focus on the project side, in our next 25 minutes to give folks an idea of some of the project capabilities in the system. So let's go ahead and open up a project and talk a little bit about some of the capabilities regarding the job setup, revenue, and tracking funding and contract value of any particular job or task. What you're seeing here is this is a job setup card, my internal job number, description of the work, who is the client we're doing the work for. By the time you see this little caret down, it means that you're looking into a list. So I don't need to remember that Department of Defense is customer number 3001, because when I look into this list, customer name, the phone, or contact, main contact, and I can search by any one of these. So I don't always remember, customer and vendor numbers, but I do know the name of the client. So I don't need to remember those type of things. So once I select it, it's going to fill in all the relevant fields. Who is the main contact from a functional perspective? So this looks into the list of all my contacts. If I need to add a new one, I can just hit New. It pops up the contact card, allows me to create a contact on the fly. You'll see that idea throughout. What type of client is it? So is it commercial, federal, state, and local government? Who is the PM on the project? What type of contract, period of performance, etc. So some informational data on the general tab that I'm filling out here that can be used for reporting purposes as needed. When I go to the posting tab, this is more the financial guts of this job. So it's everything from the department which is performing the work. For instance, I can have people from multiple departments that perform work on this job, and revenue and cost can follow their home department, or it can follow the department from the job or task. Information regarding revenue recognition and billing. So this piece, very powerful and flexible, gives you the ability to choose from the standard revenue and billing formulas, or from an advanced perspective, you can actually build your own as needed. For complex scenarios, system supports you in that growth. In this example, it's a cost plus fixed fee job. So the billing pool group, this is related to my indirects. So whether I'm using my corporate provisional rate for billing, or I could use examples where I could have a budgeted rate, which means I offer a discount off my corporate rates, or the structure itself is different than my corporate structure. So for instance, G&A in my demo system is based on total cost input, but I could have a job where maybe the government, or we negotiate with the government, that we can't apply G&A to travel. So this is a way that you can set up that job to bill it the way that was awarded. What is the fee percent? So these fee percents, configuration based, so whether it's 5% across all my direct expense categories, or in this example it's 5% on labor and 2% on travel, you can set it up the way that it was issued. Any type of withholding on that. And then fee amount is this is related to fee on hours. On the contract tab, this is regarding my primary contract number. So if you remember earlier from the demo when we showed that drag and drop, and we talked about that contract vehicle the work was being performed under, this is kind of the top level, my contract. Below the contract, we've got the job. Below the job, we're going to talk next about the work breakdown structure, or WBS. Other contract number, contracting office, paying office related to that work being performed. So before I go to the WBS, I'm going to talk a little bit about these boxes on the right because I think they're important and a little bit different. So one is the status box, which is showing me information about contract and funded value, revenue, billings, etc. But all of these numbers can be drilled into, and you can continue to drill all the way to source transactions, and you can also pull up any type of source documents. So when I drilled into AR, I can pull up the original invoice. I can also look at any applications of payments. So easy as a user to find information. I can take notes against any section. I can link documents. So whether I use the document link function, or there's a free add-in to NAV that provides a SharePoint integration, I can drop documents from my desktop onto the main record screen, and it'll drop it into SharePoint for me. All right, so now we talked about the hierarchy, contract, job. Below that is the WBS. The WBS is a 60-character alphanumeric field, and what you're looking at is sample setups. So when I expand one of my and any one of these WBS levels, you can see the detail below it. A couple things regarding the WBS that are important. One is related to contract and funded value. So in my demo example, I've got funding and contract value set at level 2, which means that only level 2, because there's nothing below that in this example, can use this funded value. However, if I set funding at level 1, that would mean that any charge code below 001 could use that funding. So you've got flexibility to set up that contract the way that it needs to be managed. I can also map these WBS codes to a CLIN or ACRN as needed. That contract and funded value is made up of one or multiple funding modifications. So this would be the history of any mod to this contract. If I needed to enter another, I could just enter the information in. I could use my calendar to enter the date, or I'll just put in T to put in today's date, and we'll just say that it was a $300,000 mod. And now, once I accept this change at the WBS level, you'll see that the job gets updated and also the WBS. So when I hit OK and we go back, you can see that the contract and funded value now is 14 and 13.8. And when I look at that subtask, you'll see the detail of the subtask has now been updated to 1.5 million.
Hey, Paul, a question came in here, and going back a little bit, but starting uploading the document, the free SharePoint access, can you restrict access to the uploaded documents?
Can you restrict access?
And I know, I think we talked about it before as far as who can access different areas and stuff. So
yeah, well, so what happens is that SharePoint add-in, you've got to load it on any page you want it to be visible. So the first thing is there's security to get to this page. So if I don't have access to the job card, I won't have access to the SharePoint site. The second thing is the person needs to have access to that SharePoint site. So if I was a user and I had to access the job card but not the SharePoint site, same idea, I couldn't get to it. So I don't know if that answers the person's question, but what we can do is we'll follow up with them to make sure that that they're comfortable with the answer and that it gives them the information they need. All right, so that's a little bit on the WBS setup. A couple other things are, in terms of visibility, this is the idea of, can I see it on a timesheet or an expense report, that particular charging level? And then who can see it is done under membership. So this is where it's telling the system who can see the charge code, how long can they see it for. So by default, they can see it during the period of performance for that particular job, or if you restrict it down further, they can only see it during the period of time that you've identified on the particular charging level. To go back to the idea of the period of performance on a task, one of the things to mention about each task order is each task order can obviously have a different POP, but it can also have a different revenue and billing formula. So I can have an example where most of the tasks are cost plus fixed fee, but I might have one task or multiple tasks that are of a different type. So this one has a firm fixed price task on a mainly cost type contract. So the idea of a hybrid contract is handled through that mechanism. So now I've set up a job, I've defined contract and funded value and assigned people, also defined my approval hierarchies. Now in terms of budgeting, I can now budget resources on jobs. So I won't go through all the details of this, but this is the place where I can budget my people, I can budget my ODCs. Once the system has the direct costs in there, the system can calculate what the indirect load and the projected fee or profit would be based on those initial setups. You have the ability to set up an unlimited number of budgets, so I can have my initial baseline budget and then create new budgets based on how the project has changed over time. So now I've set up the job, we've defined a budget. The last thing before we start to enter time that we might want to talk about is alerts. And what alerts allows me to do is to configure a message to be sent out when a condition is met. So at any level of the WBS, I can compare the spent or billed value to the funded or budgeted value, and then send an email at a certain percentage. So limitation of funds says that 75%, actually 60 days prior to when you 75%, supposed to notify the government if that clause is invoked on a contract. So this is one way that you can tell somebody, what percent of funding used are you at, and that can go out to the PM, task manager, or you can just hand key email addresses in there. So just a quick way for someone that is trying to be more proactive in terms of communication between finance and operations. So that's a little bit about a cost type contract. I'm going to cover a T&M before we go over to the time and expense to record time and expenses as part of that process. So I won't go through the other setups because we already have done that. But on a T&M where it's different is under setup, the bill rates are based on a T&M labor rate. So let's go ahead and open up for job 2025. What are the T&M labor rates? So one of the things that the first thing you see is when you look at one of these lines, it says job number. So the system knows when I'm on this job to only filter for this job. Labor category code, in this case consultant 1, effective date, bill rate. So you can see that that consultant 1 labor category is entered in there multiple times with multiple starting dates. So that's how the system knows at what point does that bill rate change. So I don't need to go in and update it, and I don't need to have different labor category codes because it has that effective date. So now the second thing is each resource, they get assigned a corporate labor category code, but on each job they could perform under a different labor category code depending on the work they're performing and also the requirements of that particular labor category code on that job. So let's go ahead and let's open up our resource labor category list for the job. And what you're seeing is here are the people and what is their default labor category code. So let's filter down to one labor category code. So let's look at trainer 3. So you can see I've got 2 folks that are trainer under the trainer 3 labor category code in this project. And then we'll go back to our resource prices, and here's the list of my labor category codes. Let's go ahead and filter to trainer 3. So if I just right-click, I can do things like filter or copy or paste rows in here. So here is my list of bill rates over time for this job. Anytime I'm on a list or a ledger, if I want to send the data to Excel, I can just hit this send to Excel function. I can send it to Word. I can print it. I can also email it as an attachment. So if I want to send it to Excel, I hit that button, or I hit Control-E. And what you're going to see is it's going to create an Excel sheet for me with all those details. It also timestamps it. And you can see that there's the Dynamics NAV add-in tab for Excel, which allows me to refresh the data. So if I happen to save this worksheet locally, what would happen is if I went back into it another day, I could refresh it, and it would give me whatever the latest information is. So when I hit refresh, it's going back to the system, and you'll see that this date and timestamp, it's still the same date, but the timestamp got updated. So the thing that's also nice is all these filters still work. So if I wanted to see, all of the, let's look at all the prices that are maybe greater than $200, now I say OK. Because it sends it over in that clean format, it makes it easy for me to do those type of things. If I wanted to make entries in Excel, so I'm going to add, I don't want to do it that way. Let me undo that. Actually, what we're going to do, when I copied the formula, it looks like I copied only one line, so it made it the same labor rate. So I'm going to go ahead and let's just bring it back in so you can see that it refreshed it for me. And now I put in 3 new years. And I'm going to go ahead and copy this. So I'll just hit Control-C. I'm going to go back into the accounting system, and we'll go down to the bottom, and let's paste that data right in here. So I can actually enter data inside of Excel, paste it in, and it makes it easier for me to manage things. That's just a little bit about how things work with Excel, and it sounded like from our poll that people did quite a bit of use from an Excel perspective. All right, so now we've set up a job, we've defined who's working on it, talked a little bit about the bill rates. So now let's talk about entering some time and expenses, and let's go through the process to invoice it. All right, so we're going to go over to the time entry side and talk a little bit about entering time and entering expenses. So I'm on the timesheet, so browser-based. A couple things to just note is, one, you have the flexibility on timesheets. So anyone that, if you have a weekly timesheet for some people and semi-monthly for others, you can have different timesheets within the same company. The timesheet periods, those are configurable by the client, so clients can decide, the timesheet cycle here. Other things from an end user perspective is, as an end user, I can look up my PTO balance by clicking the PTO button, and it's going to show me, what is my current accrued PTO. The PTO categories are defined by the customer. So you don't need to just have vacation if you got PTO and sick, or vacation and sick, or you've got other categories. You can make those, set those up in the system, and then the system can accrue that PTO based on your rules. If I need to request time off, hit the PTO request function, then go in and identify when do I need time off. So, let's say that I need off that first week in November. So we're going to go ahead and we'll put in our first week in November that I need some time off there. The reason is I'm going on a family vacation. And from there, select the job. So this would be the type of, you've got a job for PTO, or maybe you need leave without pay. So I've got some PTO left. I'm going to use that. And then I hit save. And what save is going to do is this is going to kick off the workflow. This is going to send the email to my approver, and my approver can then review and approve that time off request. If they choose to reject it, they need to let me know why, and then I'll get an email back letting me know why. If they approve it, it'll just go onto my timesheet, in terms of that future period time. All right, so let's talk a little bit about entering time. First thing is, oftentimes people work on the same projects each period. So my favorites bar is a way to select what projects that I work on every period, and I can save them into my favorite list. And then every time that I start a new timesheet, it's going to drop those in there for me. Then what I would do is I'd go to the day that I worked. So let's say yesterday I worked 6 hours on this one project for requirements, and then maybe 2 hours on this task below. If I need to enter a comment, I just hit my enter comment section, and we'll enter whatever data here. Click OK, save it. Now as an end user, that's the process that I'm going to go through. Once I submit my time off, same idea with that PTO request. At the point of submission, I'm going to send an email to my approver to let them know that time's available for approval. So a little bit about expense reports we'll cover before we go back into the accounting system. So on the expense reporting side, if I need to create a new expense report, I would just hit Add Expense, and then identify, what is the period for that expense report. So maybe it was the 18th through, I got back yesterday on the 21st. What is the description of travel? So we traveled to New Orleans for a conference. If I received an advance, I could enter that, click Save, and now it creates my expense header for me. From here, if I travel based on per diem, I can go through the per diem wizard process. So that this was in Louisiana. And what was the destination that I went to? So I'll put in New Orleans for that. The county, you can also just use the drop downs if you don't know it. And then because I could travel to more than one destination, I would choose the period of time I was in that destination. And then, same idea, the job that it's for, so I can type in, and it only shows me the jobs that I'm assigned to, or I can hit the drop down. And then the lodging code that I use, and then also the meals code. Select that. Now I click Next, and now it shows me, my per diem grid. So if breakfast was included, I could uncheck that. So just the process that I would go through as a user, to perform that function. Let me just show you also about if I was entering an individual line. So maybe, I need to charge my mileage. I drove from home to the airport. So the process for doing that would be I would enter the miles from my house to the airport. And then same idea, what job is it for? Job WBS. The expense category, mileage. I'll go ahead and save that in my expense report. And what you see is that the system calculated based on the number of miles, what is the rate that I get reimbursed at. So I don't need to remember this. It's just something that I enter on my expense report, and then the system does the calculation for me. So I'll just say mileage to airport. And then as a user, I would save this, and then I would submit it. If I had any attachments, I could attach any documents related to it before I hit the submit function. So, easy to use, fully integrated with the accounting system. And one of the things that really helps with is to help automate things. So I don't need to worry about re-entering it. Let me go to the expense report inside of the accounting system, and we'll just show that that expense report was created as I was typing it. So we'll go ahead and hit expense, and then let's go to that bottom expense report. And you can see that, this was the mileage trip that I paid, or that I went on, and then the approval, would show who needs to approve that document. So before I go to processing time, I guess my question would be, what are areas that people are looking to improve?
Sure. And we're going to get to that poll. Real quick, Paul, there was a lot of questions that came in.
Okay.
So I'm going to narrow down a few. Talking about the timekeeping function.
Yeah.
As far as if corrections need to be made.
Yeah.
Okay. Do they require reapproval, and how does that handle? And then the other one was about the per diem wizard.
Okay.
And the first and last days at 50%. I'll let you get to those, and I'll load up the.
So absolutely. So the per diem wizard, the first and last days at 75% handles that, and then the question regarding reapproval of time, there is a process for timesheet corrections. So if someone submits a timesheet correction, it goes through a whole separate approval process, and then it gets posted in the current period, and we can go into some of those details. But the poll that Damon's putting up is regarding
the main areas of focus for improvement. Obviously, a lot of folks on the line are here to look at improving their system. So some of the areas that we've talked about is improving the project management reporting, automation of a lot of these manual tasks, as we've talked about, integration with other systems, and the dashboard views, getting a better insight into your finances. So as those numbers are coming in, Paul, it looks like a lot of folks right off the bat, the integration is very important, and the improvement in the project management reporting, as well as the automation. So it's almost clear across the board. You know, it is an option. You can pick as many as you want. It looks like a lot of folks are picking just about everything. So.
Okay. So it sounds like people are looking to make improvements. So I think that really what we see is that it's a more competitive environment out there. You know, companies that are competing for federal work, margins are tighter, so they're trying to find ways to really become more lean. And you know, hopefully that's an area that we're able to help our clients with. So, all right, excellent. Thanks, Damon. All right, so you know, where we closed off was we were talking about timesheets and expense reports. You know, we covered that expense report side, and you can see that I didn't need to re-enter anything. We'll just go back to it, and I just want to touch on one last thing on the expense report before we get into the timesheet side of it. So when we were in there, we talked about the fact that you don't need to re-enter it. You can see who needs to approve it, or if they approved it and when they approved it, and then also attachments. And then what accounting does is they review it. They make sure it's accurate. You know, so maybe this person put 500 miles in, you know, to go to the airport instead of 50. You know, you can then reject it if you need to or change it. Then the final step is this create purchase invoice. It turns that expense report into a payable, you know, so you're going to pay the employee and also, you know, charge the job and the expense side from a GL perspective. All right, so we were talking about entering time, and the nice thing is timesheet all fully integrated with the accounting system. What a user is going to do, you know, each timesheet cycle is the first thing they do is they run the missing time report. This is going to show them, you know, who hasn't entered time, you know, who doesn't have. I've heard all sorts of interesting requests around, you know, can this electroshock a person if they don't enter time by a certain point? So it can't do that, but it can send them an email. So you can send them an email and copy their supervisor. But you know, once you get all that time approved, the next step is you need to bring it in the system. So you run the import timesheet function. This is going to take all the approved time that's in the timesheet table and bring it into the time journal for labor distribution. So I'm going to calculate labor distribution against it. And what that's going to do is it's going to calculate the per hour rate. So when I run my time journal summary report, what you'll see is each employee, you know, it hits the employee ledger with the details, whether they're salaried or hourly. It's going to calculate their per hour rate. And then you'll see the detail of what jobs they worked on. Summary for all projects, a GL summary, and then a benefit summary would be if they took any type of time off during that period. Once you complete that process, if you work with an outside payroll service, we have standard integration with ADP, Paychex, and payroll networks, but we've got clients that use all sorts of different ones. Everything from a bank, Kelly Payroll Service, you know, there's a bunch out there that we've integrated with, so not a problem to do that. And then the final step is you hit post. This is going to have that financial impact on the project. So now, we've set up a project. We've recorded time and expenses. One of the things that Damon talked about earlier was indirect rates, and then we're going to go to the billing side. So for folks that have cost type work, managing your indirects can be one of the most tedious and potentially manual process depending on what systems you have. So managing indirect rates is, we'll say it's very streamlined and easy from a usage perspective inside of Dynamics NAV. So there's 4 steps to it. So step 1 is you define your rate structure. So you can see in my demo system I've got a fringe, 2 overheads, and a G&A. There is no limitation to the number of pools. The other thing is any type of intermediate or service center is all set up within the structure. The only requirement being it needs to be in a sequence above where those costs need to be later used in terms of a final pool. Once you set up the structure, the next step is defining how the rates get calculated. So what you'll see is what accounts I'm accumulating in terms of my pool and what departments. Same idea with the base. And you can see that the fringe that was calculated in step 1, a portion of it got allocated into different accounts to be later picked up. So my direct labor with fringe applied is my base for this overhead client site pool. Once I've defined that, then I'm telling the system from an allocation perspective, once I accumulate these costs, what happens to them? So for a final pool, they're going to go out to projects at both an actual and provisional rate. And how the system knows what to use for both, the provisional is based on what's set up. Again, date sensitive, your provisional rate, and there's also a section here for the final rate. So you can do that final rate invoice or final rate true up as needed. And then the system will populate the actual rate based on all the actual costs that come through. So when you run the allocate cost function each financial period, that is going to be what takes those costs and allocates them out to projects. Those costs get posted to both the project ledger and the general ledger, and then they're available for reporting as part of that process. So I'm going to open up my chart of accounts, and what I'll show you is down in my allocation section, you can see a range of accounts that are used for allocation purposes, and I'm going to highlight just 2 of them to show you how it works. So I've got an overhead to project, company site actual, and offset. So the actual overhead costs that are accumulated up top, they're allocated, and you can see the detail of it here that show the allocation, what was the rate, what was the base, the WBS, and amount that was allocated. So, and in that description, you see the detail of that. So it really makes it easy for an end user, from a processing perspective, and if you have questions, easy to answer those questions. So the last step we'll go to is the invoicing process, and this is, again, whether you invoice semi-monthly or monthly, the process you're going to go through, you run the create invoice function, and what that does is it creates an invoice worksheet that you're going to review, and once it gets reviewed internally, there's also a send approval request that will send operations an email to request approval on that document. And once you're comfortable with it, you post it, and that's when it's going to have a financial impact. A couple things about the invoices. One, you can print them as many times as you like. So you can see that this invoice here in particular, I printed it 12 different times. To reprint it, I just open it up, hit the print button, and I can print this thing in many ways. So whether I want to print it by labor category for labor or by resource, which is the person's name. If I want to roll it up, I can do that. If I want to print it to PDF, Word, Excel, I can do that. And I can also email it out of the system. So we'll just do a quick preview of it. And what you'll see is, the details of what's on this invoice. So you can see, the information about contract and funded value, labor, materials, travel, burdens, fee. And we just mentioned the fact of not only printing it, but also emailing it, and then finally, if need be, you can print it off on a government format. So, covered a lot of ground today, but there's a lot more to the system. So for folks that have questions, feel free to, you can submit them there. We'll also follow up with you and answer any questions you might have. But it looks like it's 12, so we
ran out of time. We have a ton of questions to answer, so we will have to follow up with a lot of those. But we want to make sure we stick to our time limit.
Yep. So absolutely. So we appreciate your time. Have a wonderful day and a great weekend, and we look forward to talking to you soon. Take care.